Hello, I'm Ben Williams and welcome to this week's 5 Minutes of Field. We'll be showing you at locations like this where you can put in your fall food plot to help you be more successful this fall. No. Look at that. Loosen that up and then I'll get the other. There it goes. It ain't a monster tree, but that's still a serious tree. There's the root ball. Wow, wasn't that some great footage we just had showing one of the guys we had come in to clear out some spots for food plots, which brings us into this topic of food plots. Over the next few weeks we're going to be diving into and analyzing 3 different setups or 3 different unique scenarios that most landowners or most land leasers run into when they're on a piece of property where they can put food plots. We're going to dive into these on different budget aspects as well as different hunting strategies and or just natural feeding strategies that these food plots can provide. With that being said, let's dive right in it. With the idea of food plots, it always comes to mind that a lot of people stay away from them because they say they're too expensive. And that's not necessarily the case. Food plots can be done with less money but a little bit more effort on part of the person creating the food plot. Based on this next few episodes, we're going to be going over different strategies, like I said, about how to create these food plots on most budgets. We're going to be showing you 3 different scenarios for food plots for all you guys for this upcoming hunting season that want to put a little bit more venison in your belly or more antlers in your hand. Starting off here with scenario number 1. We're standing on the edge of this farmer's old field. We've asked permission from the farmer and landowner that if we could use this corner of the field that's not being used for production for agriculture. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here. We've talked to the farmer, we've marked these trees. We're going to move out some of these trees, cut them down, leave the stumps for stump sprouts as well for this next couple of years. That way we don't have to pull out the stumps as well and create more work for ourselves. And also it'll help break up the food plot a little bit with several bushes off the stumps, if you will. Then we're going to come in here with a glyphosate-based herbicide. We're going to spray and knock down all these grasses and weeds. We're going to come in here and we're going to go in with different tilling mechanisms, such as a smaller tractor than the one a farmer would be using, a tiller, and even a hand rake. Like I said, all of these depend on the budget that you're working with for these food plots and how much money you want to put toward them, as well as how much work you're willing to put and effort you're willing to put into these food plots. So here we are at site number 2 for this week's 5 Minutes of Field with Old Tin Cup Habitat Restoration and Enhancement. What I'm standing on is an old log landing which extends off of this old logging road. So what this is an area that's obviously been cleared for when they brought the logs in, when they were harvesting the timber from this property, to bring them in, to grade them and load them onto the truck to take them to the mill. These areas are typically very open and accessible for you to get in and hunt on, as well as get machinery into them to perform whatever you're trying to do, whether it be plant, spray, you know, maintain these plots. So as I'm standing here at the dump / log landing food plot that we're going to be manipulating for these upcoming episodes, I'm looking at it and there's not going to be a whole lot of work that needs to be done here other than spraying, disking, and planting. It's very nice, very well open and maintained as it's been mowed by the landowner. But I'm looking in front of me and there's a locust tree right there that's going to have to come out because it's inhibiting a lot of growth of vegetation under it already, and I don't want it to hinder my plants for my food plot. You know, it's shading a lot and it's really low-lying branches, which could make it hazardous to getting in here with equipment and working up the ground here, but also they're not going to scrape much off those locust branches. In this week's Plant of the Week and Tip of the Week from Old Tin Cup Habitat Restoration and Enhancement, we're going to be talking about crab apples. This crab apple is a tree that we planted 2 years ago when it was a 12-inch whip. It is now approximately 6 foot tall, as it's just about even with the top of my head. The reason this tree is done so well, which leads into our tip of the week, is we provided this tree when it was a young whip with a tree tube. These tree tubes act as the tree's personal greenhouse, if you will, providing extra heat and insulation during the winter months and also a cooling effect during these warm summer months. Also with these trees, you see that they're not browsed that much. And that's not because we have a lack of deer on this property. We have quite an abundance of deer on this property. But what this little tip or trick that I'm going to show you for this week's episode is, as any used deodorant sticks that you have, be it your wife's, girlfriend's, your own, your kids, anything like that, hang it from these tree tubes. This provides a human odor on this tree that doesn't prevent deer from browsing on these new growth that comes out of the top of the tube, but it might inhibit them slightly from browsing on this. And that's just a tip and trick and plan of the week from Old Tin Cup Habitat Restoration and Enhancement. Welcome to our third location for this week's 5 Minutes of Field with Old Tin Cup Habitat Restoration and Enhancement. This spot's going to be called Make Your Own Spot. This is a piece of the property that is about 2 acres in size now, 1.5 acres, 2 acres, that once looked like this behind me. Solid box elder, you know, broom brush, honeysuckle, old abandoned orchard, just a thicket. Yep. Yeah, she's only got a few drops on her. We came in here and had a bulldozer knock this out, as you saw in the beginning of this episode. Came in here and knocked this out so we could utilize this as a food plot and ambush area for these deer on our property. You'll see us as we manipulate this food plot that we let go fallow last year, as you can see by the amount of grass in here. We're going to come in here and we're going to not herbicide it, we're going to disc it under and use it as a green manure, so to speak, to replenish that nitrogen in the soil, and then plant it to a corn and bean mix here for late season food plots. And hopefully we'll be putting down a big doe or a nice buck on this plot come winter time. If you'd like to see yourself right here on an episode of 5 Minutes of Field with Old Tin Cup Habitat Restoration and Enhancement, send in your photos to otc.management@yahoo.com. Just a reminder to check us out on Facebook anytime at Old Tin Cup Habitat Restoration and Enhancement. Also, feel free to call me anytime at 315-879-7802 to schedule your free initial property assessment for this coming year. Again, I'm Ben Williams, and thank you for stopping by for 5 Minutes of Field with Old Tin Cup Habitat Restoration Enhancement. I'll see you next week here in the field.